Okay, hello everybody. Time to start up our meeting. So, go ahead and call to order and go ahead and do the first item on the agenda, which is always, are there any changes to the agenda? Yes.
Let's see, my name is Dr. Miles Bonart, not Bonart, Miles number 5. Got my name wrong.
Are we talking minutes or are we talking agenda item?
I'm sorry, I'm.
Yeah, so we'll get back to you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so changes to any of the agenda items? Anybody need anything switched around? We're good over there?
We're good over here.
Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and keep the agenda as is. And then we'll go ahead and do call to the public. Since we have no one here, do we have anybody online?
I believe it is just city staff currently online.
All right. And so no call to the public then?
Oh,
That looks-
no one here for call to the public.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. All right, we'll move on to item 3. Okay, now we're at where you want to be, Dr. Bonart. So,
On corrections, item number 5, my last name my name is Dr. Sharon Miles Bonart. I just got it reversed.
We'll correct that. We'll correct that.
Okay, and then on number 6, let's be consistent with calling me whatever
Yeah.
you call me.
Yes, I will work with staff to correct that. We'll correct it to Dr. Miles Bonart.
yeah.
Also,
So how would you prefer it?
I would prefer just to keep a separate Miles Bonart.
So you want Dr. Miles Bonart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Miles Bonart.
You got it.
Haircut, too.
Dr. Bonart, could you make sure to turn your mic on? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that, Mr. Alvin.
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay, very good.
okay, so those
okay,
two
on-
changes, and going forward, we'll do that, okay.
Number 6, item number 6, what was the wording on the motion? I thought it was agreed upon that
Yeah.
the motion would, the wording for the motion would be placed in the minutes?
I think this one was simply going to executive session. I could look back at the minutes, but I think this was simply a motion to go into executive session.
Okay, because it says identify items for future
Future agendas.
agendas, it doesn't say that we were going into.
Okay, I think
Just
the
look
issue
that up.
actually is the dash line.
Right.
The dash line should have been after where it says number 3, update on Mountain River.
Uh-huh.
It should have been, there should have been the dash line.
Uh-huh.
Afterwards, the motion after that was to go into executive session, which falls in line with the closed session item that took place.
Thank you.
So we'll make that correction to
Yeah,
clarify that.
it's kind of evident we have a new person. Yeah, that's
Yes.
cool. That's
Yeah.
good.
So we'll correct that.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So any other changes, Dr. Bonart?
No, sir, thank you.
Do anyone else have any changes to the minutes from last month? Okay, so can I get a motion to accept with the changes proposed?
Aye.
All
I
right,
so
we got a
move.
motion to that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, there we go. Another item down, so that takes care of item 3. I got it, yep. Okay, oh, and then our favorite topic, the time to a new election of officers.
So this is technically our business meeting of the year, so it's the opportunity for annual election of officers, as well as there's a future item, or an item further down the agenda for legal training. But this is opportunity to reconsider or revisit the appointments or the selection of the chair and vice chair. And so I know Mr. Garabay has been serving as our chair, but we entertain any selections.
Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Joe Garabay for chair. And may I make a second motion at the same time for vice chair?
Go ahead.
And that we nominate Mark Wancho for vice chair, if he's willing to take the positions, if the gentlemen are.
If nobody else wants to nominate themselves, I'm good with that.
Are there any other nominations?
Yes, like I say, I'll do it if nobody else wants it, but if somebody else wants it, you can certainly have it.
Okay, so we have a motion, we just need a second.
Okay, a second then?
Second for that
Okay,
nomination.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right.
Stuck for another year, Jeff.
I'm here for another year. Okay, takes us to item 5. Overview and feedback of the revised open space pages on the citywide El Paso website.
So I will navigate to the website. Let me make sure it's being shared. IT, can you share the screen that I'm showing? Thank you. So this is currently obviously our city webpage. Now I just want to demonstrate how to get to the open space portion of the webpage currently. And so once we go to departments at the very top, we'll navigate to Parks and Recreation, which is under Public Services. Okay, and then this webpage will be displayed. And this is how I typically would get there, is if you go to Parks and Planning, and here there is a tab, Open Space. So it's, again, Parks and Recreation, and then the Parks and Planning tab here, and then it's the third point there for Open Space. And then this will lead to the current portion of the website that's dedicated for open space. Here are, a few years ago, about a year or two ago, we transferred from our old system, our old website, to this current one. But a lot of the information, from what I understand, was just transferred over. But this is where it is. It's, and this is under the Parks Department. There's a little introduction here that talks about open space, and then a vision for open space, which is for, I believe that's located in the Open Space Master Plan. And then on the right, there's some information, just general information, events and places, regional, mountain biking, and then at the very bottom, it talks about open space partners. And these actually do lead to other websites. So that is the current web page, and as this was identified as one of the key deliverables here very soon, and this is something that we can work with staff with, both with IT and with Parks. Any feedback that you have on this would be greatly appreciated. I know Stephen has reached out to IT because he had some ideas, so he had started preliminary conversations with them. Unfortunately, he's taking care of himself.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, this is something the board wants to, focus of how we can improve and publicize and advertise
So
open space.
since most people wouldn't get there, what comes up if you just type in trailheads in El Paso?
So we'll just do a quick search.
Maybe up the specific one.
So there's another one here.
There we
This
go.
this
Single
is
El
the
Paso, that's good.
this is the first hit: Trails and Trailheads, Parks and Recreation.
Okay. It takes us straight to the spot.
Straight to the spot. This is a little bit different from the web page, so that's the other point too, is the open space is on one portion, the trails and trailheads is on a different portion of the website. So again, this gives a little bit of information about etiquette, although I'm not sure how many rollerbladers are using some of the natural trails. But then it gives some information and some locations about some of the trails here. And from what it looks like in looking at these items, they're all in more developed areas. So they're more what you may consider similar to like a hike and bike trail, where it'd be a paved pathway adjacent to a roadway. These are that's the way typically these may be viewed.
It's kind of a mix.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of both in there. You've got the Three Hills Trail up above there. That's on natural surface trail. So it's a little bit different.
Oh.
It's a little bit, and scenic drive is not really a trail. It's a road that gets
Yeah.
closed on a day. So
And then here also information on trailheads.
Yeah. So I'm more concerned that, again, we were kind of worried about visitors showing up, and if they wanted to find a place, could they find a place? And it looks like we have something there that at least gives them some information along those lines. Yes, Dr. Bonar?
Is there any possibility that can be broken, that meaning open space, can be broken into two areas, being natural open space and paved trails?
I think there are different ways it could be conveyed. So one is identifying the open space areas, which I think, as we're all aware, are undeveloped areas. The other is how do you enjoy those? And it could be pretty easily identified through our mapping system, whether it's a paved or unpaved surface. Obviously, people have different preferences, what may be suitable based on their needs.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
what I'm referring to is a lot of this Artcraft Sunset Terrace, that's a linear area. That's cement. That is not a natural trail. That is, in the more direct way of putting it, you don't find mountain bikers on that terrace linear trail. You don't find runners specifically that want natural trails. There's a difference between making, well, I don't need to explain it to you all. You all know the difference. Artcraft Sunset Terrace is not the same thing as Lost Dog.
Yeah, and I would have to defer to the Parks Department, but when they're mentioning trails, I think it's a general comment that they're making. Obviously, there's a difference between a concrete paved pathway versus a natural trail.
Another example of that is the Country Club Trail. That's not natural, and if they would just make two sections under open space, if they want to call these cement paths open space, then let's have cement paths and let's have natural open space. And those are two different types of open space. And otherwise, when you're looking, when you go to a new city and you want to see, like the Blue Bonnet Trail, which is mostly cement, then fine, you can find that. But if you want to find something that is like the ones that are in Las Vegas, that are more natural trails, then you need to, and you say natural trail, there is no designation for natural trail. I'm just trying to make it easier for people to find what they want.
Yeah, and I think that'd be an easy identifier, is just what type of surface. Is it concrete? Is it asphalt? Is it natural? You know, and I think that'd be an easy identifier. And I'm sure there's some where it's a mix of.
So let's ask our resident expert on trails. If you go to, Trail Forks or any of those places, how do they distinguish, or do they distinguish?
Well, access roads are distinguished as such, and natural surface trails are, it's access roads or natural surface trails. None of them, it doesn't, Trail Forks doesn't discern between a paved trail and an unpaved trail necessarily. Trail Forks, though, is really, I mean, it's with the intent that you're going out on a mountain bike trail somewhere. It's
Okay.
Trail Forks is geared towards mountain biking.
What
essentially.
about some of the other ones? All trails?
All trails. I mean, so anything other than a road can be considered a trail on Trail Forks, or maybe all trails. I don't really look at all trails very much. So. I wouldn't, if I were to build a map of the trails of El Paso, it would be things that have natural elements. And I would actually consider the Rio Grande Trail a natural trail, although it's a sidewalk. It was a poor choice of tread, maybe, but it is a natural environment. So it would be considered something like an urban trail, like
Okay.
what Austin considers their greenbelt type of things. So it could be an asphalt trail in a natural setting. An asphalt trail in a neighborhood is less natural than that. Yeah.
When I looked on there, is the Rio Bosque not listed? Or did I just miss it when I looked for it?
It looks like that's one that's missing. So again, this may not be a comprehensive list as well.
I mean,
In the past, there's been things listed here that didn't exist too. So this is not completely maintained
Okay.
list of trails and trailheads.
If you could check into
Yeah.
the Rio Bosque also, I'd
be
appreciate
great.
that, because
Yeah.
it looks like all of these are elsewhere.
okay, so we got that.
Can we go back to the wording?
To the open space wording? Sure,
Um,
because right now we're within trails and trailheads.
I'm
No,
sorry that I'm,
Okay, here's the open
Blending work
space.
That's okay, no, no, no.
And you bring up a valid point. We're talking about open space, but we're also talking about trails, and it's two different sections of our city's website entirely, so,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
apologize.
No, but that's some of the feedback that we
Yeah.
need in order to improve it.
Can you make the wording a little bigger,
Oh,
pretty
let me-
please?
Let me see. Oops.
Trails and trailheads. Did you see that?
You know, I was looking at the vision statement, and I know a vision statement is always in the future, but then I was thinking, well, it is what we have now. I mean, it's not like we're planning to have this, like, you know, and so I wanted to bring up that conflict that I'm having within myself, that it's, all of this is will be, will be, will be. But we're talking about what we are presenting to our community now. You
So
know.
when this says open space, or is this open space as in us, or is this just talking about open space like parks?
So again, I want to differentiate between a few different items. Open Space Advisory Board is a board
Mhm.
that is
Yes.
appointed by City Council. This open space is when parks are dedicated, typically as we think of a park, it's a flat field, there's playground, there's courts, sidewalk, that's considered a park. Open space is the undeveloped area, so that's how I would view it.
Okay, so this isn't open space as in, because that's not our vision statement, obviously.
No, but again, the mission statement that was created was for the board itself. It's not for open space generally.
Okay.
And that's where I think they're pulling from the open space master plan is verbiage from that document.
Well, I just think that's misleading, because it sounds like we're in the process of making something happen, but that's not what it is that we want to say. We want to say, this is what is available to you now.
Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I think it's a combination of both, because we have what's existing right
Yes.
now, but we also want to improve and enhance
But
and
that-
expand what we have.
That, to me, is very futuristic, like, we don't have it, but we're planning to get it. That's just something I
Okay.
wanted to know.
And all this feedback here, this is a website, so it can be modified.
Yes, Dr. Bonar.
Okay, back on the website where it says Parks and Planning, and then you go and you click on that, and it goes Parks, Trailheads, Trails, Trailheads, Open Space. Down below that, it says that the areas that it's supposed to be covering is aquatic centers, trail and trailheads, recreation centers, sports, remembrance tree program. Now, going back to where it says right under, could you bring that up? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
right
doing
here.
it, you're doing it.
Yeah,
Okay. Click back on Parks and Planning.
yeah.
See how it says parks, trails, and trailheads, open space? Now, I would think that these would be the little words, or the indicators, for what's coming down below, which, can you put your cursor on that?
These-
Yeah.
these
So
guys.
if you've got aquatic centers, so why is aquatic centers under Parks and Planning instead of under centers? Trails and trailheads, and down below it has trails and trailheads. Open space has nothing on here that says open space on the click boxes below it. Are you following me?
Yeah, I'm seeing what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Skate parks, where is that? events or youth programs? No, 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 no. There is nothing that says skate parks down below. It just says sports. It's not consistent.
Yeah, and what I'm
They're not
looking
being
at,
consistent in what they're saying. Well, this is what's under parks and planning. If open space and parks and trailheads are under parks and planning, then down below where you look for more information, they should have their own little boxes.
yeah, and I think one thing I'm looking at, I'm clicking on a couple of the different tabs at the very top there in that
Right.
gray area. And so like I'm under park shelter rentals right now.
Parks,
And-
shelter renters, okay.
So I'm on that, I clicked on that one, and then they have the exact same tabs that you just
They
referred
have
to, Dr.
nothing-
Barnhart.
That's right.
And so I think that's where there's no correlation, if you will.
No, thank you, the word's correlation that I was looking for.
Okay.
It looks like this needs to be reworked or
Okay.
brought current, because trails and trailheads, although we, meaning OSAP, is concerned about those, we're primarily, our primary focus is acquisition of open space, and there's nothing, and parks departments take care of open space for all intents and purposes. But we have no box here that shows, open space, and then we should have pictures down below. We should have our vision statement and all of that in our own little page. Would that be what it's called, page? And have the vision statement, have areas that are identified as preservation areas, such as MLK, Mary Frances Kiesling, that type of thing, where there's, and of course, Lost Dog.
I think the other thing, as we're looking at the makeup of the webpage, this is under trails and trailheads, and they're showing a mountain biker, looks like a hiker. But you look at the open space,
Nothing.
well, you see aquatics. So again, I think just little things like that to help convey, show a open space area.
So is this the stuff Stephen's working with them on, or is Stephen working on other things with them, or do you know?
I've just been involved in some minor communications, some
Okay.
emails, but a lot of it is looking at maybe what other things to incorporate as well. So obviously fine tuning, like little things like this, changing a picture, that's something that should be done. And
I think there kind of needs to be a whole restructuring of how open space is laid out on the city website in general. So we're talking about Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation is responsible for trailheads only. They don't do anything else in Lost Dog. Water Utility and Frontera handles Lost Dog. Same with Napland. So there, on that point, there should be probably some sort of showcase regarding each of our preserved open spaces, such as Lost Dog and Napland, and what goes on behind the scenes on those things. Lost Dog is not technically a city trailhead, just to be clear on things. So it could be, but it's not. It was the first non-state park trailhead in the city. And what kind of led to the rest of the trailheads being built out.
No, actually, if I can dig a little bit deeper on that. So a lot of these that appears are city assets, okay? But if you're a user of these, do you
It doesn't
care?
really matter,
It doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
So we sort of also need to look at the intent of this as well.
Yeah.
Is this just to advertise all trails, trailheads, open spaces in our area? Because if so, we could differentiate too if this is city or maintained
Sure.
elsewhere. I mean,
I don't think we want to.
It's
From a user standpoint, if I'm looking for a trailhead, I really don't care.
whose it is.
Yeah, so it should just, went under trails and trailheads and open space, you should have open space, all the available trailheads, and, yeah, it should have the right kind of picture associated with it, so people can look at it and say, okay, this is what I'm gonna be seeing when I go there.
So the city trailheads that we're talking about are partnerships between the state parks and the trailheads because they're gateways to the state park in general.
Yeah,
So, I mean, on the same token, the user would not differentiate whether it's a state park trailhead, say Mundy's trailhead, or Lazy Cow trailhead.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, to them, it's all the same.
Should all be
You're
the same.
entering the state park either way.
Can't that be just like a caption with each of those? You know, lost dog is, I don't want to go there,
Mhm.
okay? Let's see, Lazy Cow, City,
Mhm.
Monday, Franklin Mountain, that type of thing. Just, you see
Yeah,
it in all
I-
kind of literature, why not this?
Yeah, I think that'd be a simple point. We just make sure we can identify it correctly, because at the end of the day, too, if Parks is maintaining these, they want to make sure they're not taking responsibility for someone else and they're carrying calls. But if it's
Yeah.
clear that says, okay, this is a responsibility or who's,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's helpful
okay.
for the user to know, you know, hey, I'm showing up at, I need to get into the state park to get to this
Right.
location. Or to recognize that we had a quality of life bond that built these other trailheads. And although there's a monument there, it's kind of mixed up and muddled a little bit on our website.
What about a map of the El Paso area with, what do they call them, blowouts, or whatchamacallit, where you put your cursor on it and you tap it and it pops up? You know what I'm talking about?
Certainly.
What's that called?
It's like a call out almost.
Call out?
Yeah.
Where
We need
it
a web
shows,
design
it would have a
person
little,
here.
because when I looked at things having to do with the county and the city, as to who owns property, et cetera, you have those call-outs, I guess you call them, and it says, you click on it and it pops up, it could say, Monday Gap, Franklin Mountain, how big it is, and the little dots could open up too, as you really want to get cute about it. Little dots could show where you can enter into the state park. Now, that's getting very fancy, but but still, like when I look at property and I want to know who owns it, how big it is, I can click on that and it gives me a bunch of information. Why can't we have that for Parks and Recreation for the open space areas?
So, yeah, we have to, so right now we're talking about the stuff, and so we're talking some feedback. So the feedback I guess we're seeing is we would like it to be more sophisticated.
Oh, good
and,
word.
With some-
maybe more encompassing of all the trailheads with more detailed information to each specific trailhead. Natural surface, owner, I like that, location is always good, stuff like that.
I
And,
think
you
the
can get there
length,
with
the length is probably beneficial to know.
So what?
The length?
So we tend to avoid length because it all depends on,
Where you're going.
yeah, because the trailheads don't necessarily, it's not trailhead to trail. Sometimes the trailheads go trail to head to main.
They're all
I
access
apologize, the trails I was
Yeah.
referring
Well,
to. I
It
apologize.
has it on there. Miles
Yeah.
1.8, miles 2.
Well, can I?
Go ahead.
So, going back to Sharon's point, I think too, it helps if, in the pop-out, if there are some pictures, like when I Google Rio Bravo, then the pictures, I get an idea of what that's dirt, so
Yeah.
that if I'm going hiking, okay, I get some feel for what it is. 'Cause that by itself is a good start point, but you need a little bit more. And I
So we
agree
need
with
more
you completely.
detailed information
Yeah,
on
so
each
what-
specific
Yeah, so if I
trailhead.
click on Three Hills Trail, then in the pop-up, there are some pictures of.
What it looks
basically-
like.
Yeah, like. some
amenities
pictures out there.
that signify that trail. Yeah.
Or just like basically what it kind of looks like, just some general pictures of it, right? So that way I, as a hiker, would say, okay, I get an idea what it is that I'm going to go do. Also, if, I like to hike and stuff, so I like to know, is it an easy, is it a medium?
Speak up, I didn't hear you.
I like to know
Yeah.
whether it's an
Yeah, you want to
easy-
know the difficulty
the
level.
difficulty
Difficulty.
level,
Yeah.
is it easy, is it medium, is it, and I think that's important to put in there.
Yeah, so
because
that gets specific to the trail, and so,
that's in the
Beginner.
pop-up, I would say that would.
so, but you see, when you talk about pop-ups, when Dr. Bonar was talking, she's talking about pop-ups and those are trailheads.
Uh-huh.
So those trailheads, yes, it's very common to see things like that. You'd click it, you'd see this information, you'd find out whether there's, they usually tell you if there's parking and whether you consider it easy or not, that kind of stuff. But it's hard to tell because I tell you, most of the trailheads here, you can go from very easy to very difficult, all depending on whether you want to take a right-hand or a left-hand turn.
Right.
And so I usually don't see that stuff on the trailheads. But I do think more sophisticated, and ideally if it were a map, so that the person looked at it, okay, I'm staying at this hotel, and you can say, okay, that means these trailheads are close to me, and so how do I get there? And then I go, okay, go from there, kind of build out, so.
Like an overview map of some sort.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even just a Google map, an embedded Google map would probably
Yeah.
be even just.
That's all you
Yeah.
really need.
That's all you need.
So yes, it needs to be a little more sophisticated, like I said, and if we could get some more detail on the specifics under each trailhead.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
So this is considering that open space falls under parks in general on the
No, no,
website.
no.
The categorization within the
So this
website.
is just navigation
Yeah.
for consumers. It has
Yeah.
not, it does not relate to, you know, I call it chain of command or whatever. So just because
Yeah.
these things fall under parks doesn't mean we're under parks.
That's the truth.
Responsibility.
However,
Yeah, the responsibility. So you gotta just think, if you're a consumer, where would you go looking for this stuff? And so you wanna put it along those lines.
Would there be any chance that open space would fall under the community and human development portion of the site? You know, would it fall anywhere other than parks and recreation?
I think if you talk about us as a city entity, as a government type thing, it might. But if you talk about open space in terms of a consumer again, I think people would think, hey, I look at Parks and Rec to find it.
And so we're talking about the product, which is open space.
Yes.
There's no real mention about the Open Space Advisory Board and how that product comes to be.
And there's two different spots on the website, and that's the thing. So when you're
Yeah.
looking at trailheads, you're looking from the consumer spot. The thing that we first went to, that was kind of just open space. It was kind of us.
Kind of a talk about open space, and maybe that's where we would fit on
I
the
have a
site.
question. Can you go back up to the top of that website where it says
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation,
Mhm.
where you first land?
Yeah. Oh, when it first land?
Yeah, when you first land. Well,
This is where
One
you
more,
first land.
One more. Up, up,
Parks.
up, up,
This is where you first land on the Parks website.
okay.
And then from there,
You go to Parks and.
Parks and Planning,
Parks and
and
Planning.
then that's where you pick trails, trails, open space.
To me, that's not very intuitive, but I don't think people would be trying to navigate that way.
well, I'm just saying, like, right there, you know, if I'm looking for open spaces, that doesn't tell me where to go. I mean, I realize that you say
Mhm.
parks, right? But I don't understand why we couldn't say parks, recreation, or parks, open spaces, and recreation there, with a change in that, in that
Yeah.
picture, that speaks more generally about all of us.
Yeah, no, that is not intuitive, and I think you would find that is reflective of a lot of the city website.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something, it's not normally an easy thing to get to.
So-
More importantly is if you type into Google, does it get you to the
there.
right page?
So that's why I think it's important that we consider parks, comma, open spaces and recreation, or parks, recreation, and open, but I think open spaces needs to be up there, because that's very misleading to me as a non-knowledgeable person.
And I think just generally, the ease of navigation to it is not intuitive, and so that's where it needs to be more front and center.
So if we
Yes.
say, if we add the open spaces there, then there's that other, because we're really not there or the other, exactly.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I look at this and it says Parks and Planning. Actually, that doesn't make me think, excuse me, I believe.
So
Florida, scuba diving.
So the other thing I just wanted to display is, as a map, typically we use GIS, and so it's just a matter of what information we want on GIS. So this is currently what we use for development and a lot of the purposes that I work with a lot. So each one means different information, so we can display whatever information. Then typically when you select one, let's see. So this here just gives some information. And so that's where, like here, this one here, this is related to parks. It tells you some of the amenities, some of the things that are on there. And so basically, a lot of this information that we're receiving right now will be relayed back to the Parks Department and the IT team to start looking at how we can incorporate these into a refreshed and
Yep.
sophisticated open
And it needs
space.
to be, just needs to be a lot more intuitive. In general, a web page should always be intuitive. You shouldn't have to fight to get to anything.
Okay.
But anyway, I think we've talked about it. We've given you our feedback. So not enamored with the product right now, but glad to see it.
No, and obviously we have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And so this feedback is valuable. What we'll do over the next month is work on a lot of this feedback. We'll also, I know Steve has been reaching out, Mr. Terz has been reaching out to, with IT, start getting some feedback as well. So this is valuable. So over the next month, we'll work on it. We'll have an item on the following agenda in, oh, better not be October, but I guess October.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To,
Halloween.
to see where it's at, to see,
Yeah,
get
and
some
I'm
progress.
comfortable with that, because we all know that's what Steve does for a living, and so let's let our expert
Do it.
see what he can do with it.
Absolutely.
All right, so that was item 5, right? And I don't think we need any motions unless anybody wants to put a motion forward.
I think I have a lot of marching orders here to feedback, so we'll come back in October with another item.
All right, so that puts that one. That takes us to item 6, initial recommendations on revising the enabling ordinance for the Open Space Advisory Board. And we've talked about this one before, and I thought we had already done some wording, so what are we doing here?
So this is obviously one of another item that through the strategic planning looking at is what can we do to revisit the enabling ordinance. And obviously there's, I know one that's been a focus from the board previously, but this is an opportunity to look at, I'd rather look at it as a whole and see where does it need to be refreshed. And just so we can make sure council acts on it once and then we can move forward.
All right. And so can we get that pushed to all the screens?
Yeah, so IT, can you share my screen again? Thank you. And so this is the ordinance in its entirety. And again, this is, what we'll do is we'll have to vet this and work with legal on official language here. But this here, the first section is about the initial setup of the board, which has already passed, but obviously each council member gets one selection, which is pretty typical for most of our boards and committees. After that, just general information, compensation. Again, this is general. The bylaws.
For this?
Huh? But the bylaws go into more detail about how the board governs themselves. So there's some general information about the selection of the chair and vice chair, which we did earlier. And it talks about quorum. The secretary, which is pretty general, but currently is myself. And then the main focus, which I believe the board is interested in terms of the board duties.
Yeah, I think this is the part that we had already done the revisions to. Because all the other stuff, to me, is pretty standard. Go ahead, Dr.
Chair?
Moore.
On section 2, 2.22.050, board duties, if you look at number A1, where it says review, revise, propose, and recommend actions to the city council on additions or changes to the open space master plan, open space goals, open space acquisitions, open space funding, and spending prioritization, comma. This is continuing that list, okay? So we're looking at Title 18, comma, Title 19, comma, Title 20, there should be another comma there,
Okay, got it.
and 21 of the city code, because that city code goes along with all those titles.
Correct.
Then it says, or any other city code provision, and it includes if requested by staff. So that if requested by staff, actually, the way it's constructed is referring back to each of those titles. That seems to be redundant to an average English speaker, because you've already said, you know, OSAB only has advisory board ability or duty. And the people that it advises, or the group that it advises, is the city council, director of Parks and Recreation, deputy director of Planning and Economic Development, chief executive officer of the Public Service Board, the deputy director of Economic Development, and the city floodplain administrator, or their designees. So why do we need, we really don't need this if requested by staff. And the word is requested. It is not demanded. So we could actually put in the comma after Title 20 before the word and probably drop off if requested by staff, because when are we not going to listen to staff? That's my recommendation, is to put in the comma before the and to drop or get rid of if requested by staff. Now, I think we have to ask our legal representative and see what the problem would be with that.
I don't see anything. The way I interpret it is is that you all have, it's Title 18, 19, 20, 21, and then if there's any other code provision, if staff asks you to look at, was the way I read it.
Other than what's listed.
Having to do with titles, the title organization. So I understand what you're saying, and I do appreciate you looking at that, because it has, as I've mentioned many a time, it's certainly been interpreted differently than the way we're looking at it today.
Okay, so again, I thought we had already done some revisions to this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we had marked it up before the city council meeting. And I don't think we presented it to city council, because at city council, we just said, give us permission to look at it, basically.
Right.
So I don't want to redo it per se. So let's verify, because if we've already done this and done some revisions, let's start with that and go forward. But if we haven't done anything, but I'm pretty sure we did it back in March, April.
Yeah, April sounds like about right.
And so we had done some revisions to this document.
Okay, I'll look back. My memory isn't what it used to be, but I don't recall, but I know a year or two ago, I know we've looked at this
We had talked
previously.
about certain languages that we said, you know what, we shouldn't strike this
Okay,
stuff.
I'll look back at the March, April timeframe.
And I'll go check my notes, because I'm pretty sure I redlined one of them and sent it back.
Okay,
But
okay,
like
I'll look at it again.
And again, I just don't want to go too deep into here on something we may have already done.
Absolutely.
I would like to make a motion, or just make a recommendation, that we bring this up next month to see where we are as far as changing this wording, and if we need to go into getting another enabling ordinance constructed.
So I think we do need another one, and we had revisions, and so we first had to ask permission to change it, and we got basically, you can go ahead and take a look at it.
Okay.
And so now we just got to pull those revisions up. So we don't want to stay with what we got, absolutely.
Yeah.
We want revisions. And so we should look at it next month, but let's see if we've got something we've already done.
And then we can have it brought up also.
Mhm.
Let's put it on the agenda for revisited and update.
Can I bring up one?
Go ahead.
Item issue that I think maybe we can address with this enabling ordinance, is that that is a quorum, requirements for quorum. When we have members of the board who never attend, that affects our ability to make quorum at times. So perhaps we can have some language in there about attendance in some way. We can't do anything about it right now. There's nothing in our ordinance that allows us to fix this problem.
But Kevin did reach out and take care of the issues that we've been having.
Okay.
And so we actually have a new member coming on board. You may have missed that because I think it was pre-meeting. But for
Right.
all of you that missed it, so yes, we lost
Romery?
Romery.
and we've got a new appointee, but he does have to go through the process, and so he has
Good.
not been officially he hasn't officially gone through it, so we don't have him. But next month, we will probably have a full slate.
Because there were times that we could make quorum if we had 4, but we needed 5, and so, if we can prevent this problem in the future. that would
So
be very
actually,
helpful.
the way it currently is, and IT, can you share my screen again, please? Is the way it currently is written, actually, this is frankly a little bit better than some other boards and committees, is a quorum of the Open Space Advisory Board, and this is under B, shall be a majority of the total number of board members who have been appointed by city council at the time of the board meeting, provided however that a quorum shall not be less than 3. So if there are vacancies, that does allow us to have
Vacancies, but if we have somebody camping on a
but-
seat.
But
then-
that is where I think the point
Yeah.
can be brought up. Also check other provisions of the code, where typically if you have 3 absences, then it's reported to city council.
Okay.
That's typically how it is, but again, the selection is up to them. Removal is another,
But I agree
Point.
with Mark. I mean, so far this board has been really strong. But I've been on another board where they never have quorum, so we never meet.
so,
You
and
know,
frankly,
so-
sorry.
Excuse me. So I think your point is well taken. I think just because we've done well here doesn't mean that in the future, there could not be folks, that are appointed just to fill the seat and they're told you don't have to go.
Yes, so the 3 thing that you mentioned, is that like an all-encompassing thing across the whole city stuff?
No,
Or
this
is that something
is-
we would have to put into ours?
So I would have to check. Let me check real quick.
Well, that's what it says in the enabling ordinance.
That if you miss 3, you're out?
Oh, that you missed 3. No, I know what you're talking about, and I don't recall.
I think it's across all boards.
Is
Yeah,
it?
it might be something, so if it is across all boards,
If
then
you
we don't
miss
have to
3
do anything.
meetings, then you're
But
out.
we got to
Report
make
it to
sure that
city
you make
council.
the
Excuse
attendance
me.
is
Yeah.
capped, so once we have 3 in a row or something, we can say, you know what, it's time.
But there's nothing wrong with putting it in there. I mean, especially if it goes across all boards, at least we're making a statement that.
So I understand, I hate redundancy, and so, yeah, especially if you have a roll up here and then you try to put a roll down here, because if somebody changes the roll up here, then you got conflict.
It's an issue.
just- Let's make sure we have a rule on top. If there is a rule on top, then it's incumbent upon us to make sure the rule is adhered to. So if we see somebody who is starting to fall off, we call on it and ask that the city get to the process of appointing a new member. And we think have been pretty good about saying, we got an empty seat, let's get it filled.
Yeah.
That's true.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the language is simply, it shall be reported to city council.
Okay?
And it's still up to city council to decide what to do.
But they would have to say removal because it's one of those types of things, because it does come from a rep.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you have a rep who's not willing to take care of the issue, or if the person is not willing to resign, we're probably stuck.
Well, it's reported to council. Is it not possible to add and request a new member to be appointed? I mean.
Again, what we do as staff is we reach out to them and try to understand, because sometimes life happens and things get in the
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
But if they're just missing it, that's where we potentially recommend that they be removed. We have an honest conversation with the representative and let them know that they haven't been attending. And they're usually pretty quick to do it. But oftentimes, though, this is where we would love your input, is we have trouble finding appropriate people who want to be involved. So that's where, if you're aware of anyone, please let us know and send us their resumes. And when a vacancy happens, we'll send it over to the respective representative to try and get that seat filled quickly. But often, it's the representative on their own trying to find someone, and they're trying to
Doesn't
do the best they can. Yeah.
And so we're full now with the one that's coming in, right?
We're actually short one,
Still short one.
Short
So we
one.
still need one. Which
Correct.
district?
District 8,
District 8, okay.
correct.
But this is one of those that it doesn't necessarily have to come from the district.
Correct. They don't have to live within the district. I believe they just have to be a representative or live within the city limits.
And isn't that the district that we had people come in and ask for our basic, to plead their situation, because of some development that was in the future? You know, that might have been.
Upper Valley District?
Right, it might, it's not really Upper Valley.
That's my district.
That's your
That's
district?
where I live, but
Okay.
it's not where I'm appointed from.
No,
Yeah, the Mesa Hills area was. is
maybe
in
there's
District 8.
someone that, Mr., what's his name? I keep, his name is Chris Canales.
Mhm.
Maybe there's someone that, one of the organizations that
So what
that
we
we
can do,
belong to
again, it
could
doesn't,
suggest.
if one of us knows somebody that has an interest in open space, just put the name out there, and we can work with city to get that name to Mr. Canales.
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
but yeah, so that's what Kevin's asking us, you know, if we know somebody who would be willing to do the work, let's put the name out there. So if anybody has a name,
And I don't need a name right now.
Yeah.
So if you're aware of someone, send me an email, their resume, their contact information, and then we'll hold it and then pass along to the representative. Again, it is up to them to appoint someone. So even though we may send it, it is up to them to determine if they're appropriate fit for.
Well, the thing is that it gives the representative the opportunity to have voice in this, what goes on here,
yeah.
along with, you know, gives the community the voice. So it has many services and possibilities.
Okay, so we were on revising the ordinance, we got a little off topic there.
Okay.
So, we're gonna move, I don't wanna say postpone, we'll just put this back
No,
on the
we'll put
agenda.
this on the agenda again. Again, as staff, you know, there may be a couple of other revisions. Some of the department names need to get updated, staffing needs to get updated.
So
So
if we
there may
can
be other
find-
refreshments.
Find out about the revisions, and if you would, verify the three absence rule, if you will, just to make sure. Because
Yes.
if we don't have a rule up over top, then we will need to put one in.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and any other items for item 6? Okay, let's go ahead to item 7, annual legal training. Are we doing that today?
No, I don't think I have anything specific for you all. You know, purview and details of the board, I think, you know, you all have really been going over that the past few months, or more than past few months. But if there's anything specific you want me to bring forward or discuss or do a training on in the future, please let me know. But, you know, I feel like with, you all have been doing a lot more than just routine board business. You've been digging into the details of OSAB, that, you know, my normal presentation would be a little redundant, so.
So do we have to do an annual training, or is this?
No.
We don't have to do an
Oh,
annual,
okay.
okay. So I guess, in general, although I'm not totally in agreement on this, what is it, the open records thing? Is that what's the thing that we open?
Open Meetings Act?
Open Meetings Act?
Yeah, Texas Open Meetings Act.
Yeah, so, I just
I could do
think-
something specific at the next meeting on open
Well,
meetings.
just in general, but, you know, and I always wonder, are we, because I have heard that we really don't fall under it because we don't provide any policy. Since we don't really have any governance, we don't fall under it. But I do know at times that we've been told we can't talk about that because we said, you know, the Open Meeting Act prevents us from talking about stuff. And so I want to see if we can get some clarity on that because I'd like to be a little more flexible there if we could.
Right, so yeah, there's two types of boards. There's state-created boards that that are subject to the Texas Open Meetings Act, and then there's advisory boards. But per council policy, all boards follow the rules of Texas Open Meetings.
Okay,
And that's for, you know, transparency for the public.
okay.
To make sure that, you know, we're online and we post all the notifications. It's just, you know, good practice.
Okay.
And so,
Yeah, 'cause
That's
the one
generally-
item that kind of gets me is, now and then, if something comes up, it's like, well, we want to talk about that, and it's like, well, you can talk about it next meeting. And that, it kind of loses its steam by then. And so, but, so we'd be still kind of hand-tied by that specific rule, because it's not on the agenda.
Right, and yeah, that's, just council policy to follow Texas open meetings and, for transparency that the public is aware of what's being discussed and
Okay, I have a
that's
question.
across all boards.
In just a minute. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Mr. Hamilton. My understanding in talking with y'all, the attorneys here, and those at the Capitol, that if there is an issue that we want to address in closed session, as it says here, Open Space Advisory Board of the City of El Paso may retire into closed session pursuant of Section 3.5A of the city charter and the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, subsection D. So, to discuss any of the items on the agenda consistent with the terms of the Open Meetings Act, the Open Space Advisory will return to open session to take any final action. My understanding, according to what this says, and the Open Meetings Act, that if it's not on the agenda, and we as a board feel that that needs to be discussed, we can go into closed session. We may go into closed session. We are not prohibited from going into closed session. So if we have been given the information that if it's not on the agenda or part of something on the agenda, that we could not go into closed session. When I've spoken with people outside of El Paso who are attorneys at the Capitol, that we do have the opportunity to go into closed session.
So generally, the only way that OSAB can go into closed executive session is under council's purview. And so you can't just go under any item. It has to be a specific legal reason why you're going on consultation with attorney, deliberation, one of those exceptions. So you have to meet those exceptions. And because it's an advisory board, it is, council's decision whether to go into executive session. So that's really the only way. You all are pretty much the only board in the city that goes into executive session. I'm trying to think. There may be a couple more.
And a lot of times that's because we deal with money,
Right.
acquisition.
Right, yeah,
I
there may
understand
be a couple more, but it's really only limited to that
Right.
that exception and that one situation.
So let me understand this better, that if, say, we wanted to discuss having something to go into executive session, let's say that this is a quarterly report from water utilities, okay, from the
Dual purpose.
stormwater money, the 10%, thank you. And we wanted to discuss, it was time to look at the money that is currently in the balance for this quarter. And somebody has been approached by a person in El Paso who wants to sell property and wants to know how much money we have, which we would already know that. And they have heard that, let's say they want to sell some of the NAP land, and we want to know how much of the current amount of money that's available in stormwater would be that property is being sold for. And we want to know. Well, it's something that's already, the quarterly report has money, talking about acquisition, that is our purview. And we want to know more information. is it your understanding that we, at that time, may go into closed session?
If it was approved by city council, I mean, you all don't have authority on your own to go into executive session.
Okay, so you're saying we can only go into into closed session if city council has given us that authority?
Mhm.
So that runs in contrary to what this item, closed session statement makes?
I don't think so.
You
So I
don't think
think
so?
what Russell's saying is, city council has given us permission to go into closed session if there's a deliberation regarding real estate property.
Right.
They actually don't say for each one that comes up.
Mhm.
But in general, if we wanted to talk about real estate property, we
Right.
could go into closed session because they've said these are the things that they have authorized us to go in. We can't go outside of these
No.
things here.
But
Am I
if
saying
it's-
it correctly?
If it refers back to or is part of what is our duty, and we are discussing acquisition and money, then the city council has already said that's our responsibility.
Yeah, so if somebody approached you and said, hey, I got this great lot over here that I
Right,
think the city should
which they
buy.
have.
We don't want to say in the open meeting, oh, by the
No.
way, there's this great lot over here, so we can't do that.
Absolutely.
But we could say, hey, why don't we go into closed session so that you can tell us where that great lot is, and we can let the city know where the great lot is, and then we can do something like that. And again, I think that falls in line. Are we good there?
Is that correct?
I mean, I think it's pretty much limited to the annual reporting and how we've done it historically.
We have been hampered in the past, we, meaning this board, has been hampered in the past by a variety of interpretations of what our duties are. So we're trying to get, I am looking for a way of getting an understanding of what El Paso City Council currently wants this board to be able to handle, and how. So maybe this is maybe I'm just bird walking, but I've been in the situation on this board where we were literally told we could not go into we could not go into closed session.
So again, going back to the example, so you're saying we wouldn't be able to go into closed session on a situation like that? How do we get the information to staff then to say, we want this thing to start, we want people to start looking at this?
So, I mean, I think we'd have to go to city council and get a request to go into executive session for that.
I think we've done it in the past where we've had an item where the discussion starts to go into closed session territory, so we retire to closed session. Although there was probably an item that was slated for closed session
already.
that other item was blending into.
We've brought
Perhaps.
into it, yes.
So generally for this board, it'll have to be an item that's listed under the executive session as an executive session item. Council, because they're elected officials and they have the purview of attorney-client privilege and all of that, you know, they can request to go into executive session on certain items. But for this board and other boards, it's going to have to be listed as a closed session item and gone through the approval process.
Okay, so again, I'm kind of wondering, so what do we do? Just tell Kevin off to the side, by the way, I want this in closed section next meeting? And because when somebody approaches us and, because it happens, people know we're on the open space board, it's like, oh, by the way, I know this lot's right here, and it's right by this other property, and you guys should probably acquire it, and so we want
I
to
mean,
try
you
to get it onto
you shouldn't
the
be
list.
wheeling and dealing your position outside of,
And I understand that, but people come to us all the time. It's happened just this last month and say, hey, I happen to know about this property here. And it's like, I tell them, I'm not a city employee. I can't do any of that. But I said, I can certainly let the city know that that property's out there. And that's, how do we get that information to the city? Or do we have to just tell them, you got to go to the city?
yeah, I mean, some of these questions I have to think a little more about, what you would do in that situation.
But Russell, aren't we limited to going into a closed session because this is an open meeting to the public?
Right.
So unless we have privilege about something which is confidential information, such as financial reports, that's why we have the right to go into a closed session, or should go into a closed session.
Right.
Because we're talking about financial information, sensitive information, and we're on YouTube and open to the public. But overall, the meetings are supposed to be open
Yes.
to the city, to people that want to attend.
Correct.
So if we close them out by just at a whim saying we're going into a closed session, then we're not being fair to the public.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's, absolutely, all of that's right on spot on.
Absolutely.
The issue is, that we've had people come sit down there and say, by the way, I've got this lot.
Right.
And I think it should be open space, and we're like, okay, well, we can't really talk about that like that. We can't just do that kind of stuff. And so I guess, that's the only situation I can think of that comes up like that. So put some thought to it. I mean, if there's, give us a way so we can get those folks and tell them, if you want to sell this property to the city, here's how you go about it, selling it to the city for open space. You know, because we all know, we don't speak for the city. I say that many times, I don't speak for the city, but people still know, you know, hey, well, you're the advisory board, so I'm telling you.
But question of curiosity, what he's saying, then, isn't that Kevin or in an attorney's role to where we could go and say, hey, Kevin, I've had this presented to me, can we run this by someone that has legal position?
Yeah, so when there's an item, at least when I receive an item, typically it's come from staff, that's requested for closed executive session. I do have to run it by the attorney, and why does it have to go there? And so that question usually has to be answered, is why does it have to go in a closed session? Because otherwise, yeah, this is Open Meetings Act and has to follow all the rules. It could only go into closed session under one of these 5, 6 items, which in reality, looking at the Open Space Advisory Board, I can see one predominantly, maybe 2 of the reasons why we may go into closed session. And unless there's not a reason, we wouldn't go into closed session. The other thing I would advise or recommend or bring up is the enabling ordinance that says it has to fall in line with the enabling ordinance. So if it's not pertinent to the Open Space Advisory Board, then it's not going to be brought before the Open Space Advisory Board. So, but in terms of acquisition of open space, there's a process too, and funding that has to be identified. Council's the one that identifies funding and says acquire them. Obviously, the Open Space Advisory Board is to advise and recommend based on information they receive. But if someone just comes in off the street and says, hey, I have this piece of property, want you to buy it, there's a separate process for that too. And if it was to be used for open space, then we'd have to look at the priority list and potentially revisit
Yes.
that and let council know we want to revisit it based on this information.
But to the chair's point, to Joe's point, and that because people know what we do and we understand the obligations we're under, the rules, how do we present an available piece of land that someone has presented to us? I guess that's the guidance we're kind of asking for, right? Like,
Yeah.
we know how we have to handle it, right? Because
You have to
we
let
all took the little,
Let staff know,
Okay.
is probably.
Yeah, that might help, really help.
I mean, I'm
Well,
sorry.
Kevin's our
Sorry.
contact.
I think frankly, I'm the secretary for the board, it'd probably be me.
that's what
And then I would pass it off to the real estate
Okay.
section of the city, because I don't get involved in that, but it'd probably be myself, and then I'd pass along that information.
Okay.
And then at an appropriate time, if it was to come before the Open Space Advisory Board, then it could be brought forward and say, this parcel is being considered to be acquired, what do you think?
All right.
So
One
where's that
comment.
land, Joe?
So switching gears just a little bit, same sort of topic, but, so we did have an item on executive session a couple months ago. It had been on previous agendas and got pushed down, and then it got rescheduled again, and we were told one thing, and then we found out it was actually a different reason it was rescheduled. I would just make a request that we're told the actual reason why an item is rescheduled, to avoid any future confusion or issues like that. We may have actually been told the actual reason, maybe I missed it, but it just kind of, it was a cause for confusion at the last meeting, at least for me, so, yeah.
All right, so we were on annual legal training. So I guess just a snippet on, but I think I understand now. So we follow this because council has told us to follow it, not because it's an actual rule that we have to follow.
Right.
But since council told us, that makes it the rule, basically. That clears up my understanding, because I've always been told, well, you really don't
It
follow
does, yeah, we follow it by practice, but because we aren't technically covered by it, any executive session action really has to be approved by council and vetted by council before we do that,
Okay,
because they hold that privilege of, that attorney-client privilege. and-
yep. No, that works for me. So,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this because we are an advisory board to city council. We do not, we are not the last say-so in acquisition. And it has been very clear that council and the water utility, when it comes to acquisition, have recently began the acquisition of properties that, although we may have looked at them and talked casually about them, they were not brought to us until the properties are in the final, if I may, the final process, parts of the process of acquisition. So basically, we are an advisory board for city council for things that may have already taken place, and we are not privy to that information until it is in the final stages. Am I correct? It happened last meeting.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, El Paso Water, I don't have, I'm not privy to what they're doing, so.
Right. I kind of want to reiterate something that our enabling ordinance states, and that is we are an advisory board. We do not make the final or sometimes even the initial steps in an acquisition. We are only to advise the bodies that I've already mentioned. Sometimes the final product is not consistent with what discussions have taken place among the board.
Yep. I think that sums it up.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments then on the annual legal training? All right, we'll close that item. And items for the future agenda, and we've already talked about getting, was it 5?
It was 5 and 6 back on the agenda.
With 5 and 6 back on the agenda. Is there anything else we need to talk about for October?
So El Paso Water is scheduled to come for their quarterly update.
Okay,
Joe,
yes?
I'd like to know what the status of the Mountain to River project is,
Okay,
along with what's going on with Bear Ridge.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, because it came up earlier, so just give us an update on the trailheads, because I know Palisades, we talked about it a little bit here. Just, where we stand on each of the trailheads that are currently being constructed.
Okay, on Mountain to River, I did provide a very brief update that it is going out to bid, but I can see if I can get a more in-depth.
If you could possibly get some type of presentation, because the last I heard is that there was a lot of hesitation with property acquisition.
Okay, yeah, I'll work on getting a presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to know specifically which portion of Mountain River are we talking about that's going out to bid? We have essentially two phases going on with that, so if we can get a little specific on that. Okay.
The other one, which I'm not sure if it got resolved, was the Texas Open Meetings Act. Do you want a presentation on that, or are you?
I think I've got,
You got
yeah,
it?
I've always wanted to know how come we fell under it, even though I've been told we don't.
Okay.
So, yeah, knowing that city council says this is what we want you to do is good enough for me.
Okay, got it.
Joe?
Yes.
May I? Because of my background as a professional, and I think everybody sitting here can appreciate it, if it's not in writing, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. So I'd like to know where it is in writing. Thank you.
The city council wants us to do this? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir. I want to know where it is in whatever documentation. I'd like to know that, because that way, if we can read it, we can at least understand what the words say most of the time.
Okay. So, think we can find that, or?
Is this related to Mountain River?
No.
No, we're
sorry.
talking about city code.
Oh,
Yeah,
city
so
code,
we
okay.
fall under the Opens Meetings Act because city council has asked us. What Dr. Bonart wants to know is, you know, that they pass some motion.
City council.
Council many years ago that said, here's how
Okay.
boards operate. Yeah, if they did, she'd like to see that.
I know that there's a lot of things that we will probably never need to know that are in writing having to do with the organization of the city government. So, and you start getting into that, and it's really interesting, strange.
And we just got an update on MLK last month, so let's pass on that one. Probably another update, we'll put it for November, December. Yeah, I don't think we want to hit it in October, but we are going on 2.5 years.
At least.
How many years have we been going on about Mountain River?
I know.
I've got some documentation here that says.
All right. Did we have
07.
any other items for the October meeting? Anything anybody needs to talk about or wants to talk about? So that's what we got going on for now, Kevin.
Okay.
So, did we have a closed session, or that's just the?
No, that's just a standard in there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that's just standard.
Okay, and so with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a motion
Motion,
and a
Mark.
second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are done. Thank you all.
Thank you.